Birth control has been an issue in the United States for decades and is still an issue to this day. The use of birth control was not even legal until 1965, only 48 years ago. Although birth control is now legal in the United States, it still faces many obstacles. To understand the struggle birth control faces today, it is important to look at the long history that encompasses this struggle. Anthony Comstock was one of the first major antagonists to the birth control movement. According to the article, A History of the Birth Control Movement in America by John Amory, Anthony Comstock won passage of the Comstock Act, which prevented the circulation of obscene literature and articles of immoral use. Contraceptives fell under this ban. Due to Comstock's efforts, contraceptives were hard to come by and rarely discussed up until 1915. This is when Margaret Sanger enters the picture. Sanger was a bold proponent of legalizing access to birth control. Amory says that when Sanger was a young woman, she worked as a nurse, similar to Emma Goldman, the famous anarchist, in a low-income area. She saw many poor women having children they could not care for, and their health was suffering because of it. Starting in 1914, she began her long struggle to educate women on contraceptives. Amory also tells how Sanger opened the first birth control clinic in the U.S. in 1916, and in 1921 she founded the American Birth Control League, which is now commonly known as Planned Parenthood Federation of America. The article Margaret Sanger by Ellen Chelser explains that in 1917 Sanger was jailed for distributing contraceptives to immigrant women from a makeshift clinic in a tenement storefront in Brownsville district of Brooklyn. Sanger fought for contraceptive rights for women up until her death in 1966. She is known as the founder of the modern birth control movement. Fast forward to present day, we live in a much different society than Margaret Sanger did. While women's rights have come a long way, there are still groups of people in the U.S. that oppose birth control. Much of this opposition is due to misconceptions about contraceptives. Because birth control and sex are still seen as taboo in American society, many people believe incorrect information about birth control. In the article, Dear Pro-Lifer, Is There Any Way to Prove that Contraception is Wrong? Peter Belansky writes that using contraceptives like the pill is similar to having an abortion because it can prevent a fertilized egg from attaching to the uterine lining. Most U.S. citizens do not believe this, but there is a select group that do. The people who do believe this think that both birth control and abortion should be illegal because it takes a human life. Much of this information is due to the staggering lack of sex education in public schools in the U.S. Many public high schools teach abstinence-only education, which completely avoids the topic of birth control and STIs. Because young people are not learning about sex and birth control at school, they often learn incorrect information from their classmates, older siblings, or the internet. The consequences of insufficient sex education in schools can be catastrophic. Young people don't learn how to use birth control or where to get it, and this leads to an increase in teen birth rates and increased rates of sexually transmitted diseases in teens. Most teens are also unaware that there are several different types of birth control. There are more than oral contraceptives and condoms. There are IUDs, which stands for intrauterine device, that is inserted into the uterus to prevent pregnancy. There are also female condoms, diaphragms, the depot shot, patches, and spermicides. Most teens will only learn about condoms and the pill. This is not giving the full story or the means to protect themselves fully. For birth control basics, please visit www.mayoclinic.com/health/birth-control. Looking at the history of birth control illustrates the great strides that have been made, but also the long road ahead. Thank you for listening.